You know, I can't stand these spam chain mails that are always sent to me, like this one.
You are being evicted this Friday, April 20th, 2023 for failing to pay your rent since July of 2022. As a reminder, we do not take Pac-Man reviews as payment. This is your last.
Let's talk about Pac-Man.
I reviewed Pac-Man World, Pac-Man World 2, and Pac-Man World 3. Not in that order, but I did review them all. I also took a look at Pac-Man World Rally, and the jury is still out whether or not that even counts as a Pac-Man World game.
And the jury says not guilty.
The main trilogy of games were platformers, or to be more precise, 2 of them were platformers and one of them was a platformer with forced combat, and that certainly wasn't World 1. Shortly after Pac-Man World, Namco would expand the franchise by bringing Miss Pac-Man to 3D as well, in the form of an all-new game titled Miss Pac Man Maze Madness. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Who exactly is Miss Pac-Man? Well, it's a long story that ends in the makers of the at-game Sega Genesis owning the character currently. No, I'm not even joking. But let's time travel a bit.
Time travel noise.
The year was 1982. Mario was Jumpman, and insert generic 80s trope here. Pac-Man had taken the world by storm in the arcades. A simple game, really. You move around and eat whatever these were. Tic Tacs, pixels, bits of cheese for all I know. Miss Pac-Man was subsequently conceived via a mod of the original game named Crazy Otto. Get it away from me. This was shown off to Midway, they bought the rights, then a bunch of corporations argued over what it should be named, and Miss Pac-Man was born. And in my opinion, probably most opinions, I think it was a much better game than the first Pac-Man. So fast forward to 1999. By then, Mario was 3D, Sonic was 3D, Kirby was not 3D, and it was Pac-Man's turn to jump into the third dimension. After a disastrous development of a canceled game titled Pac-Man Ghost Zone, they finally made a game that wasn't a steaming pile of crap. Pac-Man World. I personally had a blast with this game. It had its fair share of bosses that pissed me off to no end, and the depth perception was a bit frustrating, but you know what? I've played worse.
Like the GBA version of the same game.
But here's the catch with Pac-Man World. It was a 3D game, sure, but it kinda wasn't. I've heard the term 2.5D used before, and I think that's fair. If you look at the levels, they're pretty straightforward, kinda resembling side-scroller levels, and the only difference was the movement on the Z-axis, which let you go up and down. There were movements that broke that trend a little bit, like whatever this was, but compared to Mario 64 and even games like Spyro, it kinda lacked that extra depth. Tying this back into the point of the whole video, following Pac-Man World's release in 1999, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness would release in 2000. The prior discourse of World being simple was necessary to point out because this is an even more simplified 3D version of Pac-Man, achieved by being a puzzle maze game that sort of went back to the roots of the franchise. This is not part of the Pac-Man World franchise technically, but is sort of considered to be a companion game instead, and one I thought would be really interesting to take a look at regardless.
Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness is a tale of 2 drastically different stories. We're going to be splitting this review up into 2 primary sections. Firstly, we're going to be taking a look at the gameplay and everything kind of in that group, and then we're going to be looking at the structure of the game, because if you look at one or the other, this game is either really good or not really good.
That said, Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness is very in tune with what the earlier arcade iterations of Pac-Man were. You move in a grid format. There's no jumps, there's no punches, there's no 3 individual buttons for menus. You just move with the control stick. The only other controls come in the form of the C-stick or trigger buttons that let you move the camera. But let's take a step back before we get into the game. Why is Miss Pac-Man even in these mazes and collecting a bunch of stuff? A question that everyone surely contemplated when playing the original game, so a story was definitely needed. The Pac Professor, or sorry, I got it wrong this entire time. Professor Pac tells us that evil, spooky forces have taken both the princess and the 4 gems of virtue.
So are we gonna rip off Mario today, or are we gonna rip off Sonic? Yes.
The 4 Chaos Emeralds or whatever have been taken by none other than a witch named Mesmeralda. To find her, we use the professor's time travel thingamabob and go to 4 worlds and okay, the story is kind of uninspired. As I joked about earlier, these games really don't need a story. It's very clear though compared to Pac-Man World 1 where the budget went to between these 2 games. World's story wasn't anything mind-blowing, but it was told via some really well-made CGI cutscenes that are still charming to this very day. In Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness, you kinda just get images with text. In the Dreamcast and PS1 versions of the game, this is voice acted and it's unsettling.
Come on in, my dear. I want to show you my latest invention. I call it the Patrometer. Yow!
Anyways, who cares? The story sucks, but no one plays a game like this and expects a riveting narrative, and if you do, there's something wrong with you. Let's talk about the game. As said, you move in a grid with a heavy emphasis on collecting and puzzle solving. As one may expect, there are many Pac pelts throughout the level that You know, I can't move on from this, I'm sorry. What is a Pac pellet? Has anyone ever stopped to smell the roses and ask what the hell these are? Altoids? Drugs? Little clumps of mold? Well, according to abcnews.go.com,
The best gaming news source, clearly.
the Pac pellet were originally conceived to be cookies. Yeah, that's a cookie. Imagine being at grandma's house. Oh, Sonny, I baked some fresh cookies for all of you. And it's just a bunch of dots. Anyways, yeah, we're collecting the cookies. There's a grand counter at the top for each level and hundreds of them for you to grab. This may sound overwhelming at a first glance, but you only need some of them to progress in a given level. And thankfully, each specific area containing the dots will give you a tiny word of encouragement once you get every one in that specific section.
Aw, shucks, don't make me blush, okay?
To explore and progress in each level, there's a decent bit of puzzle solving in the mix here. Throughout the levels are many different types of blocks. There's a standard moving block, which typically is only used to be pushed into pits so you can walk across them, but there are TNT blocks as well. These are used to blow up rocks, but most of the time are used a bit more creatively than that. For instance, you'll often use the TNT block as a platform itself, causing you to set your crap into place and run. On top of that, there are also the ice blocks. These can be used to move across lava, but in terms of puzzle solving, if you move them in one direction, they'll slide to the end, meaning you'll have to be sure where you're pushing the block is not a corner.
Well, review's over.
All jokes aside, the developers did think of a fix for all of these blocks in the form of the reset coin. So you can never really screw yourself. So I give the developers praise for releasing a functional game. Listen, it's not always easy. The puzzle solving is honestly really fun and genuinely pretty rewarding to figure out. I don't know, I really enjoyed it personally. The puzzles are typically how you'll also collect the fruits as well. Not always, but at least sometimes an optional puzzle will grant you access to one of the 7 per level. It's a great system, and I think this game is at its best when there's a big old room with multiple types of blocks. It's up to you to really think about the best way to progress. The puzzles genuinely feel pretty thought out. I never came across one that actively pissed me off, and I think the difficulty curve and progression was balanced very well. Unfortunately, they can be a bit glitchy sometimes. Here, I'm just trying to use a TNT block to blow up this dynamite enemy spawn, but instead, I just get stuck and the explosion instantly kills me every freaking time.
To this day, I still don't know how to get that goddamn pretzel.
There are other mechanics too. Platforms that you have to enter to swivel, switches that you have to press in combination, levers to pull. These are decent additions, but the mechanics I specifically can't stand are platforms that move, whether that be floating ice blocks or magic carpets. It's not bad to have the variety, but it often just means standing around and twiddling your pack hands. With the magic carpet specifically, you have to time your landings, which is easier said than done in a game like this. Oh, you know what I also hate? The ghosts that drop bags of gunpowder. It's not a bad idea, right? Basically, they're supposed to drop the gunpowder when they chase you, and if it overlaps with the little panel that explodes, then boom. The issue I had is it's complete luck when they actually feel like dropping it. All the meanwhile, you're trying to avoid the explosions and ghosts, and it just leads to a completely miserable time. But the thing that pisses me most off about the gameplay is just the sheer number of enemies and hazards that get thrown your way. It's not always unfair, but there's a lot of times where you're just not going to be able to defend yourself and just have to take hits. For instance, there are platforms that send electric shockwaves, and starting out, it's a good lesson in patience where you have to slowly inch on them to avoid the currents. That's good game design, but later, the difficulty gets amped to about 1,000,003, and no amount of patience is going to save you from that, or hell, when the game sends an entourage of enemies after you. The enemies don't even have to be in groups to be in pain. Sometimes it'll be, say, only a 10x10 grid area with a singular enemy, but since the area is so small, the enemy will get to you, I don't care who you are. Don't act like you're Liam Neeson. Thankfully, unlike the Pac-Man World games, all enemies can be killed with a power pellet, and it is satisfying seeing these giant dogs and vampire things get eaten by a good old chomp. In a way, it does make the power pellets a much higher value collectible, which is probably the best part of the increased difficulty in terms of game design. The saving grace of all of this, though, is that the health you have is pretty generous. I think you can take like 10 hits before you even die, and there's plenty of hearts throughout the game. And lives are more than plenty. I had like 50 by the time I got to the first boss alone, so you're really not at a risk of gaming over or anything. And that's a change I actually heavily prefer over Pac-Man World, which oftentimes made me sit down and grind lives. In a sense, this game is sort of ahead of its time in terms of gameplay style, because basically there's no lives. Like, yes, there are lives, but you're given so many of them that they may as well just be unlimited. Compare this to games nowadays. On average, they can be a bit more difficult, but they often do have unlimited lives to compensate. Super Meat Boy, for example, or Celeste. And this, in effect, just makes this game a bit bit more of an enjoyable experience. The puzzle sections are, as a result, more fun to tinker with and take your time solving. And when you die, you don't hate your whole existence, only the normal amount. The presentation being absolutely phenomenal also assists in the enjoyment of this game quite a bunch. The soundtrack had no right to be this good, but it is. Arguably, it's better than Pac Man Worlds even. The quality of the OST can depend on the console you're playing on as well. I believe the Dreamcast version has the best music, but I played the N64 version and I still really enjoyed it. And the graphics are downright charming. I love these little bats that come to the front of the screen in the snowy levels, or the starry night at the festival. I could go on. There's clearly a lot of love and care that went into this product, and it does show.
So if this game was based purely off the gameplay, you can bet I'd be sitting here with a smile on my face telling you to buy it, and I'd be giving it maybe like an 8 out of 10. But do me a favor, okay? Scroll your mouse over the video or tap it if you're on mobile. Notice how the video is not over, okay? There's a reason. We're gonna get into it.
All right, let's talk about the structure. Before we do that, let's at least talk about the end game a bit, as it's pretty crucial to my pivotal frustrations. Once we get all 4 of the what was it, ship parts, we head off to fight Mesmeralda. And by fight, I mean running from this chase sequence is actually really well thought out. It requires a bit of trial and error, but you know what? It's creative and I enjoy it. You really need to think about every input you're feeding to the game, like with these ice blocks where you can slide. After that, we fight Mesmeralda. This sequence is a bit awkward, requiring you to shoot arrows from a big circular arena at a weird angle.
Now, wouldn't this just be a good place to end the game? Man, I really need to clean these.
Alrighty, let's talk about the star system. Gee, I wonder what inspired that. Each level in the game has 4 stars attached to it. 1 star is received upon simply completing the level. 1 is given to you by collecting all the pack pellets. 1 is given to you by snatching all the fruits. And the final 1 can be earned by doing an extra time trial level. Simple, right? With 13 levels up to this point and even a few bonus levels, getting to 42 shouldn't be that bad. Oh, just collect fruits and pellets along the way and you'll be fine, right?
Huh.
This game has entire areas completely blocked off that can only be accessed by a witch key, which we get only after the first Mesmeralda fight, which means that you cannot collect 100% of the fruits or pack pellets on the first go around for a lot of levels. So after you get the witch key 5 hours in, the game basically wants you to replay the entire thing all over again.
Why?
Okay, for one, there's no point trying to get all the collectibles on your first playthrough anymore. Except wait, the game has start checkpoints as the story progresses anyways, so you kinda can't ignore the collectibles. You have to try to get all the collectibles on your first run through for like the 5 levels that actually let you without a witch key, and then go back later to the other levels. There's no indication from the start of which level has the witch key blocks, so entering a level is just anyone's goddamn guess if you should actually care about the collectibles or not. It was so disheartening to collect 95% of everything, get to the end of the level, and realize it was basically all for nothing. It's not like getting every pack pellet and fruit is a walk in the park either with the witch key. You can't always backtrack throughout a level. So if you accidentally go too far, which might happen if you don't know the level geometry that well, you either have to reset your entire progress up until that point, or pray you can get 1 of the 2 stars for the dots and fruits, just in case you wanted to play the level 3 times. Or what about this crap, where a dot is basically obstructed from view? There is a pack dot compass at the top, but it's confusing and not really clear what it's pointing to. Well, you might argue, all right, you hate all that. Who cares about collecting then? Let's just do the time trials instead to make up the slack. The time trials can kiss my Olimar ass. I say this 100% seriously. They're quite possibly the hardest thing I've ever seen in a video game. I don't know if I was doing something wrong, but I could not beat them. This is level 1. Look at this, level friggin' 1, first level of the entire game. Is this a game for masochists? These levels usually give you a set amount of time, say 60 seconds, and you can increase your time by either eating ghosts or grabbing clocks. Okay, great. Who cares about eating ghosts when the game literally takes a whole second to do the whole chomping animation anyways? Great, that was worth my time. What about these clocks that make you go off the beaten path? Oh, okay, fantastic, I got a clock. There's 10 extra seconds now, but it took me 8 seconds to grab it. But here's the thing, those extra seconds, those precious few extra goddamn seconds, you need those. You need every possible frame of animation to complete these. In one of the ice levels, I played nearly perfectly. Did I miss a ghost? Probably. Did I bump into a wall? Maybe, but I played 99% good enough, and there just is not enough time to solve this ice puzzle. It's literally impossible for me. There's not even a retry button in the levels themselves. You have to pause every time, then exit, wait, then re-enter. And since you'll probably need dozens, if not hundreds of attempts to win, it just makes the whole process even more of a kick to the balls. I'll be honest, guys, I tried for hours and hours to see the end of the game, and I was able to get to 37 stars. I kept trying, but I just couldn't get to 42. What's left in the game isn't anything mind-blowing. There are a few more regular levels, all sort of recycled. There's another running sequence and another final fight with Mesmeralda. So really, they're almost like bonus levels, but not really since they're tied behind story beats. And let's say I could get to the necessary star threshold. Let's say everything was roses and cherries. I would still complain because having to replay the whole game twice is automatically a red flag in game design. Like, it's a really fun game, don't get me wrong. I like it, but not enough to play it twice because the puzzles have no fun the second time around. Guess what? You've already figured it out. You used your noggin already. It's almost like they were self-conscious about making a game that was 5 hours long, and the boardroom executives panicked and just padded it out beyond belief. I don't even think this whole star system would be a problem if it wasn't for the damn witch key. Imagine if you could get everything on a first go-around, and you could at least blame yourself. Imagine playing Super Mario 3D World. You play every level and get to a castle that wants you to have X amount of green stars to progress. But the green stars aren't present in the levels until you go back and play the levels again. It's bullshit.
And apparently the N64 version had a few bonus levels cut, or I think like 1 or 2. So you might say, oh, you should have just played the Dreamcast or PS1 version, the better version. Hey, I have a better idea. How about you make every version of the game good instead of having there be a good version?
Well, to conclude all this is still mostly a good game. I mean, look, it's fun. The mechanics are nice, the puzzle solving is rewarding, graphics, music are all good. I mean, there's a great game here. It's just presented in probably one of the worst structures I've ever seen, and that's why I split this into 2 parts almost, just so we could see the good part and the part I think is honestly sort of genius, and the part that honestly kind of killed the game.
And I know, some people are gonna be like, oh, you didn't put the effort in, you rushed this. Well, first of all, no, I played this for way more hours than I should have. And secondly, would someone who rushed this also play the GBA version of this for this video as well? Because I did.
Yep, another Game Boy Advance port. Pac-Man World and Pac-Man World 2 got one, all made by the same corporate shills over at Full Fat Studios. This was inevitable, and by inevitable, I mean this came out 4 years later. You know, let me tell you something, guys. Game developers would go to the literal end of the earth, on fire and bleeding to make a GBA port. They would take a shot to the heart, they would jump off a cliff, they would sacrifice a duck live in 4K to make a GBA port happen. It was crucial, okay? Every game, every goddamn motherfucking poopy game got a GBA port or equivalent. Jet Set Radio, Super Monkey Ball, Jimmy Neutron, The Cat in the Hat, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Grand Theft fucking Auto. It was a crucial, a necessity, a mastering of the arts. Every game needed one. Every franchise you can even imagine needed to be on the GBA. And why?
Good question.
Let's recap on the GBA ports in this franchise real quick though. Pac-Man World 1's port was like fine. I mean, it had some problems. I wouldn't feel safe showing it to my parents, let's just say that. It was dumbed down a bit, they removed a whole world, it was kind of sloppy, and there were occasional points of massive frustration. But you could do a lot worse. Pac-Man World 2, trash, like actual unbridled trash. They turned a 3D game into a side scroller, and it was clear they didn't know what they were doing, and I consider it one of the worst games I've ever played. But this one is really interesting. Let's remember the thesis of this introduction. This Pac Man Maze Madness is a lot more simple, and as a result, the GBA port is actually a very seamless transition. It's not one for one or anything. I mean, they did cut a few levels, specifically the ones before the final Mesmeralda fight. There's some small things that are off too, like in the original game, you could push an ice block into lava, use a reset checkpoint and then push another one, rinse and repeat. You can't do that here, so I really don't know how you're supposed to get this fruit. It might just genuinely be impossible.
What the hell was that?
What a cruel prank. I genuinely don't understand why they did this. Some puzzles have been completely dumbed down as well, and the TNT block timers have been substantially increased. You can take a phone call in the time they give you here.
Hey, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. I'm just playing Miss Pac Man Maze Madness for the GB.
You know what really sucks though is that there's no word of encouragement or Pac compass for any area with the Pac dots, so often it's completely possible to leave the area while not having collected everything. The music here is also basically unlistenable, and in fact I actually had to mute the whole game because it was hurting my ears. Like the other Pac-Man GBA games, they're just ridiculously compressed. I recommend turning on an album or podcast if you're playing this version.
Or, just don't play this version, probably.
Ugh, I hate these switches. In the original game, they would turn green if you walked in them, or as a confirmation you stepped on one of a set in the right order. Well, here they just turn into a slightly darker shade of red.
Listen, this is a Game Boy Advance game. I can understand cutting a few levels out, I can understand worse music, worse graphics. What I don't understand is not having the color green.
But you know what? For all the trash I just talked, they actually fixed the format of the game. The witch key thing has been very much downsized. A few blocks still exist, but only in maybe a few levels. So you can actually collect stuff on your first go around. It's crazy. The time trials have been shifted to much more lenient times, without any clocks or eating ghosts involved, and are more of a genuine speed run. You can basically get almost every star on your first playthrough. Not to mention, they lowered the total amount for the final fight.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but Full Fat Games kind of improved this game.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that the GBA version is better. Let's be fair, mostly everything is worse, but in terms of the actual game structure, it's a goddamn improvement. I still recommend you play the Dreamcast or PS1 version, and there's even entire side modes in the console games that didn't make it to the GBA version. These include a multiplayer mode where you try to collect the most Pac dots in a few different styles, and the ability to play OG Ms. Pac-Man. But you know what? Screw it. I'm saying it. I had more fun with this version than the console one, because the Game Boy Advance inherently doesn't ruin the gameplay. It still works nearly perfectly. We're not talking Pac-Man World 2, where it's basically an entire different game, or World 1, where they awkwardly had to adapt to 3D style. I mean, this is a faithful version of Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness, and it works in part due to that grid style and simplistic nature of the game. It's the best GBA port I've reviewed on this show, and that's not saying a lot, but it's saying something. Unfortunately, this would be the end of not only the Maze Madness series, but basically the whole Miss Pac-Man line of games in general. There was a game released a year later, exclusively on PCs, titled Miss Pac-Man Quest for the Golden Maze. There's not too much to say about this. It's basically a maze collection game that reused some assets from Maze Madness, but it's a lot more similar to the arcade games. Beyond that, there was a planned Maze Madness 2 at one point that unfortunately got axed. Okay, and I know this is beta footage, but this might literally be the worst quality video I've ever seen. There's not a ton to say. I mean, it looks pretty derivative of the original game with better models, and like, I really wish I had more things to say about this, but I kind of just don't. It's cool that it exists.
And that's that. I had my problems with this game, but ultimately it is still very fun, and I recommend you play it. I mean, you don't have to get 100% in a game to enjoy it, or even get to the final levels. It's okay to play a game without beating it sometimes, so I totally recommend, even if you're turned off by that aspect, play the levels that are available, because they are honestly very, very fun and something very special. So check it out. Even the GBA version I think is pretty decent. Unfortunately, Miss Pac-Man is it's kind of gone, so I don't think we're going to be seeing a port, sequel, remake, unless they make the Pac-Mom character. It's just so much work that I kind of just don't see it, but that's how life is. Speaking of life, I feel like I'm forgetting something.
You didn't pay your rent and now you're being evicted.
I don't think you liked the Pac-Man video very much.